powerful episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into a topic that every business, whether you are a fresh startup or a seasoned brand, needs to master, like how to build and grow a marketing department that actually drives results. Now, I'm not talking about throwing a few social media posts out there and hoping for the best, but I'm really talking about creating a marketing function that is strategic, measurable, and fuels consistent growth. And joining me today is someone who's been doing exactly that across the Middle East and beyond. Please welcome Redha Alayesh. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, as you know, I introduce you with lovely guests on daily of our podcast shows. So, I'll quickly introduce you with Redha today. So, Redha is a data driven marketer and entrepreneur from Saudi Arabia who's built multiple ventures, consultant for top brands, and helped companies transform their marketing from guesswork into growth engines. Yes. So, if you're ready to take your marketing to the next level or even build it from the scratch, then stick around. This is going to be practical, actionable, and maybe even a little mind shifting. So, welcome to the show again.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to provide value to the audience and have customer practical advice on how to actually start creating or improving your marketing department.
Amazing, amazing. So Reda, I mean, uh, when a company decides that they need a marketing department, what's the first thing they should be thinking about before hiring anyone or kind of spending on the campaigns? What do you say?
So, usually companies think about marketing department in different areas of their journey, depending on kind of like what type of company it is actually. So, for example, in B2B companies, they might not start thinking about marketing until very much later because they would directly collaborate with B2B business by building relationships and partnerships and getting contracts. And then maybe after a while, they would think, okay, now to accelerate our growth, we want to have a marketing department. For, on the other hand, for B2C companies, they would need to do marketing from the start to actually attract customers and build the brand and do what needs to be done to gain customers. Um, so it's different for each company, but basically, most of them think of marketing when they want to grow to the next stage. And that's kind of like what marketing is actually. It's about getting new customers or increasing the revenue that you get from each customer.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Got it. But like if you can also share an example like where skipping that first step caused a kind of bigger problems down the road.
Yeah. So when you want to build a marketing department, there are multiple things that you have to actually make sure that are there before you actually build the department. First, you have to understand your customers.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not sure, kind of like what are your customers, what's their behavior, how do they buy, and basically understand the customer persona and behavior, then you wouldn't be actually able to build a marketing department and a process to bring them and convert them into clients. So that's one of the first steps that a company has to have before they build the marketing department. And then second is about, which is kind of similar, is about building a customer journey. So when you understand who is the right customer, you have to know what steps will they take to actually buy your product. That usually means they would become a lead, and then they would buy the product or service, and then they will start using it. And then if they loved it and they're using it pretty often and so on, they might become an advocate. So that's kind of like the general customer journey that they go through. When you have that, each step, kind of what are you gonna do, and what's the plan and strategy that you're gonna um, have for each practical step, then you can say, okay, now I have the basics for the marketing department, and now I wanna like build and improve on these basics to actually have like the whole marketing department.
Mm, understood. Mhm. And I mean, I have to say that, I mean, it's really, really powerful because so many leaders think that the solution is just kind of more ads or more hires. But you are saying that the foundation has to be clear before anything else. Am I correct, right?
Yes, because if you start doing like usually a lot of people would think, okay, marketing is advertisement, and they would just do an ad or they create a very high
Yeah.
quality video, and then they see no results,
Mm.
and then they blame marketing and they say they don't want to do marketing again, which happens pretty frequently. Like I've seen companies who spend even hundreds of thousands on one particular video to create a campaign, and then they create uh, advertisement with hundreds of thousands or even sometimes millions, but they see very minimal results, and then they say, "Okay, this was unsuccessful." But at this large scale, you can't really waste that much budget without actually being or knowing that it would actually drive results. Like you have to do the basics of understanding what would work and how do you do it.
Very true. Very true to say. Yeah. And I mean, it's like something building a house, and you wouldn't start with the curtains before you pour the concrete. So, yeah, very, very true. Yep. So, and at the same time, also like you talk a lot about the marketing being data driven. So, for
Yes.
business, that's been like running purely on the intuition and gut feeling. What's the easiest way to start using data without getting overwhelmed? What do you suggest?
So data is really important because
Mm,
um, you you have to know if marketing is actually effective or not. Without being able to measure it, you can't really know that
mm,
this is working or not. So
sure.
the very first thing to start with usually is
Mm,
to collect the contact information from every order that you have. By that, you'd be able to link every order with a specific person.
mm,
You'd be able to know how many times did they come, if they were repeated or new customers, the frequency of buying, the average order value per person, and so on, and slowly gather more data based on that. So you'd be able to ask them questions, for example, or create seminars for specific personas. And if they join, then that means they are from that persona. And then slowly build on that. So the very first step is to get their contact information. Contact information means usually three things. The name, of course, like you have to have their name, and then
mm,
either email or phone number, sometimes both. So that's kind of like the very first step. Whether you are a store, whether you are an online store, whether you are a startup or anything, the first step is to get the contact information for the person.
mm, true. Hmm. Very true. Yeah. And like once a team starts tracking the data, how do you make sure like they actually use it to make better decisions rather than just collecting the numbers.
Yeah, so this is kind of an important point. A lot of organizations, they don't utilize data effectively. So they might have some data or even a lot of data, but they are not being used in an efficient way to make a good decision making. So even like s- uh, basic statistics say that, like HubSpot says that over 60% of marketing budget is being wasted. And even though like sometimes these companies have the basic data and information to actually being able to make basic decision making, they are often very far from the customer and analyzing this data.
Mm,
So you have to understand what does this metric actually is and how can you utilize it. Sometimes organizations might focus on what's called a vanity metric. A vanity metric is something that's not directly related to the success of the company. That means bringing new customers or getting more customer value. Um, so you have to focus on what's called clarity metric, which directly relates to the revenue or customer lifetime value. So, for example, how many leads do you have? A lead is a very clarity metric. A follower, for example, is not necessarily related to your company directly.
mm,
So some companies might have profiles with tens of thousands of followers, but they don't have enough revenue or customers coming to actually sustain the business. Whereas some organizations might have only thousands of followers and they're doing much better than that company. So you have to first understand what's clarity metrics, what are the metrics that actually provide value, bring customers to your company, and then being able to tell what kind of experimentation you have to do to understand these metrics. So imagine this, for example. If you sent an email and there was a very low open rate for that email, does that mean email is an ineffective strategy for your
mhm,
business? It's not necessarily true because you can't say that from one experiment. You have to see that from different experiments. So maybe the title of the email was wrong, or maybe you sent it to um, a list that didn't engage with you before. So you got these emails from, or you bought emails and then you sent them. So there was a very low open rate. Um, and there are a lot of reasons why an email have a low open rate. So you can't really just from one thing immediately make the conclusion. But if you've tried, for example, email with sending and gaining um, hundreds of emails and spent a few $1,000s on it, trying to experiment and doing a few things, and then you still haven't seen results, at that time you can say, okay, email is not working for my customer profile. They might be from a specific demographic that don't use email. So imagine, for example, elementary school students or
mm,
um, or like maybe housewives who are not really using emails. So it really depends on the type of demographics. So not everyone has a specific way and a specific channel. So you have to kind of experiment and see from those data what can you actually bring into conclusion. And that, I hope that kind of answers your question.
exactly. Exactly true. Yeah. I mean, that is where the difference between information and the insight. Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
And if you talk about like scaling, right? So once a marketing department is up and running, what's the key to grow it without kind of losing the quality and agility that you had at the start?
Yeah. So um, this is, I think, is more common here in Saudi Arabia and fast growing markets than in other kind of markets. But in Saudi, a lot of people often enter the company. They stay, for example, for 1 year and then they leave.
Mm,
So the rotation for the employees is really common.
right.
In general, worldwide, CMOs, for example, have the highest rotation over executives. So imagine from all like other executives, the CEO, the CFO, um, and the CTO and other executives, marketing is often one of the fastest rotation where they change companies. So this is kind of l- uh, this happens because marketing usually doesn't have clear metrics of how do people actually perform. So how do you know if someone, for example, a designer, is actually bringing value to the company or not? And this is kind of where marketing plays in and how to actually translate all of that. So marketing, there are two types of marketing that are both important to actually making you grow. The first is the creativity part, which means creating good designs, good copyrights, being able to use words that's in a way that's kind of fun and engaging and so on. There's like this creative part, and then there's the analytics part. So usually companies might focus on one but forget about the other, or prioritize one a lot over the other, which is kind of like you can't really have one way and then and you can't really have like one major like if at the end a chair has four legs, you can't have one leg and then you expect it to stand up. As for as upskilling specifically, when you understand kind of how marketing in general works in basic terms, the marketing department has a few basic roles. So there is like the strategy, the strategist person who would say, okay, this is how we are going to do the marketing. This is how our customers work. This is how our market, this is how our business model work, and basically creates the basics. And then there is the content, the person who's going to create the copywriting, the videos, the designs, and so on. And then there is the performance marketer or the growth hacker, they might call it that. And then, like, there is the marketing leader or executive or manager. So each part of this team is supposed to help grow the company and have it in the marketing department. For upskilling, you have to grow all of them together. So when you have a, a very strong data analytics, for example, but the creatives are average or below average, then you can see it clearly affecting your metrics because you might want to upgrade your level to the next, upgrade where you are to the next level and say, okay, let's go to create a very important campaign for a festival or for a new year or a new project. But then because you don't have the quality of the design, and that can be told by how um, effective is and engaging is your copy and creatives, um, then you wouldn't be able to up, you wouldn't be able to actually say that you achieved or improved your marketing. And at the end of the day, marketing is a department that consists of people like any other departments. Like you need to have financials and accounting. You need to have the marketing department to actually grow the company. So what in upskilling them, you have to focus on the basic skills in each role. So you'd say, okay, strategy involves one, two, three, designs involves one, two, three, colors, typography involves all of that. And then you'd say, okay, what are the gaps of the employees? There are a lot of systems that we can measure these gap analysis and create them and then slowly grow employees into that and improve them. The the interesting thing is that when you actually improve employees and try to develop them, they actually stay with you longer. They don't want to leave the company. Even though they get better offers from other organizations, they start being like they feel like the culture is better, they are learning, they are improving, they are developing, they're contributing to the company, they're seeing the value, they are seeing their accomplishments. That's what happens when you learn and start applying. But in the other way, when you don't do that, it kind of just goes stagnant and not improve at all. And that's kind of how to approach upskilling marketing and improving marketing department and the employees of the marketing department.
Got it. Got it. That's really beautiful. Yeah. And uh, so before we move, like, uh, has there ever been a time that you had to go against the popular trend because the fundamentals told you that it wasn't right?
Yeah. So a lot of people, when they think about marketing, they think about following trends. So if something got famous, then we must do it. And most people do a specific strategy without thinking of, like you said, the fundamentals of how things actually are. So, one of the things that I've seen that actually worked really well is that, and instead of saying we would do free shipping in your e-commerce website, you do shipping, for example, for 1 real or $1.
Okay.
Um, so it's almost the same thing. You're doing it almost for free, and that dollar really wouldn't cover the cost of shipping. But that idea of changing it from free shipping to uh, a number, one or two or whatever, it changes the perspective for the customer. It makes them more intrigued because they haven't heard it before. It's less common. And that's kind of like one of the principles is that you have to surprise the customers and get through the noise.
Yep.
So it's very common that when you talk to organizations or you want to do a specific project, some people might want to do a specific thing. So one of the organizations that we talked to wanted to appear everywhere. They wanted to appear on TV, newspapers, social media influencers, every channel that they could, they wanted to go in. And they wanted to go all in 1 day. So I asked, why do you want to do that? They said, if we went through all of this in 1 day, then people would start talking about us in that day. So I said, okay, that might work. People will talk about you on that day. Then what happens after that day? The second day or the fourth day? Um, so they couldn't really answer me, but they felt that if people started talking about them, they would continue talking about them. And that doesn't work. And usually overspending on one particular specific period of time raises the cost for your advertisement. So if you spend $1,000 on 1 day and spend $1,000 over 7 days, for example, usually the 7 days will bring better results. just because you spread them over longer periods of time. So it's very common to kind of, when you are working with organizations or other employees, or you have some ideas that are not really principle driven or based on specific data that you saw that actually work. It's just like a guess or a feeling that something might work, and then you immediately want to do it. And you can imagine if you implemented that immediately and you went all in, how much would that, how much that could cost you. That's kind of how most organizations lose over 50% of their budget of their marketing budget because of this. The CEO might have an idea and then immediately wants to implement it. And then the marketing manager, for example, immediately goes and does it without actually figuring out whether it would work and doing some kind of experimentation on what's the value of this idea. So it's kind of common to come across these like situations where how do we do a specific thing and how do we actually comment and not follow the trend of what people are actually doing or what our competitors doing. This is also a very funny story because a lot of people just try to copy their competitors. And sometimes copying your competitor doesn't mean anything. For example, one of my friends started a company, an e-commerce store that basically sold um, uh, ingredients for cooking. And he wanted to see if this would work or not. This slowly kind of got, sorry?
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. This slowly in a specific niche got famous. So
Yeah.
around 1,000 houses in the neighborhood got interested. They saw the advertisement and so on, and they said, "Okay, this is interesting." And slowly, other people wanted to copy it. They saw that some people are buying and so on, so they immediately wanted to copy it and started doing it and copying that person. But my friend, even after like experimenting with that for over a year, he wasn't profitable. And he spent a lot on that business with money and time trying to figure it out. And it didn't work out. The other people, when they saw that he was selling, immediately thought, okay, it was profitable and we want to copy it.
Mm.
But they didn't know that actually the business wasn't working well. And copying it would mean you're just losing. And that's kind of like part of what you see in a lot of startups, for example, because startups, usually when you have an idea, there aren't like a lot of people doing the same thing. So, for example, connecting teachers to students, you'd see, for example, 3 or 4 companies doing this in your area or or your city or your country. And then you wouldn't have a lot of companies doing that. So you might see them copy each other. Whereas that's not necessarily effective for that specific demographic that they're targeting.
Amazing.
So you see that play a lot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Wow. Reda, I mean, this has been such an insightful conversation. And thank you so much for breaking down the process of building a marketing department into something that feels both doable and exciting. So, for everyone who is listening, here's your takeaway. Like, marketing is not just about creativity, but it's all about clarity, consistency, and measuring what matters. So start with the foundation and let the data guide your moves and build a team that plays to its strength. So if you have loved this video episode, share it with a friend, colleague, or that one person in your network who's still convinced that marketing is just about making pretty ads. And remember, growth is not luck, it's built. So, with this hope, until next time, stay curious, stay intentional, and as always, keep building your healthy mind, healthy life. Thank you so much.